first thing they found was the jaw. Not the whole skull. Not the rest of the child. Just a jawbone lying on a bed of blackened ash, teeth still white, as if smiling at the torchlight. The archaeologists didn't speak for a long time. Some said it was because the air in the cave was too thin. Others whispered that it wasn't the air. It was the feeling. A kind of weight pressing on the chest, as if the mountain itself knew they had disturbed something that wanted to remain buried. The reports say the jaw belonged to an infant, less than 6 months old. But the marks on the bone didn't match any predator in the fossil record. The striations were too neat, the grooves too deliberate. They were human bite marks. You've heard of prehistoric cannibalism before. You've probably imagined it. Desperate hunters tearing into the flesh of their enemies in times of famine. But this wasn't that. This wasn't survival. This was something else entirely. What kind of people could kill and eat their own newborn? And more importantly, why? When they began digging deeper into the sediment, they found more bones. Tiny femurs, ribs like pale needles, skull fragments no larger than a coin. All of them marked the same way, cut, stripped, and burned. Every layer of earth seemed to hold a different generation. It was then that someone noticed the carvings. On the wall behind the ash pit, faint in the flickering light, were shapes scratched into the stone. Broad, sharp lines forming crude human figures. All of them had wide circular mouths, some open in a scream, some in something closer to joy. Above them, in jagged strokes, there was another shape, a figure larger than all the rest. Its arms spread, its head round and smooth, with no eyes, no mouth, just emptiness. When they sent the carvings to be dated, the results returned stranger than expected. The layers of soot over the images suggested the figures had been drawn, burned over, then drawn again, over and over for centuries. It was not a single event. It was a tradition. And this was where the stories began to creep in. Some say these people believed children were born carrying something inside them, a shadow, a sickness, a spirit that would grow stronger if left to live. That to save the tribe, they had to burn it out. The cleanest way, they thought, was to consume it themselves. Flesh, bone, and all. But the bite marks told another story. The scientists noticed that the cuts weren't random. They followed a sequence. First the feet, then the hands, then the soft parts of the face. A pattern repeated exactly on bones, separated by hundreds of years. It was ritual, deliberate, practiced. Imagine holding your own child, still breathing, as the elders gathered around you. Imagine the heat of the fire at your back, the chanting in the dark. Imagine believing with all your heart that this was the only way to keep your people alive. Would you do it? Don't answer too quickly, because the further they explored, the more the cave seemed to push back. One of the younger team members, a woman named Elia, swore she heard crying from deeper inside, thin and muffled, like it was coming from behind the stone itself. The others laughed. But when she returned alone with a flashlight, she didn't laugh. She didn't speak at all after that. When they asked her what she'd seen, she said only, "It was looking at me." There are parts of the cave they still haven't mapped. Narrow cracks in the rock lead into chambers too tight for equipment, places where the air feels warm even when the rest of the tunnel is ice cold. They say if you press your ear to the stone there, you can hear a heartbeat. The older researchers told them not to touch the carvings. They said every team that had disturbed them before had suffered bad seasons. Loss of funding, sickness, accidents. One man who tried to chip off a fragment to take home died in his sleep that same night. No one could say why. You're wondering if this is just superstition. So were they, until they found the child that wasn't burned. It was buried alone, far from the ash pits, wrapped in a layer of ochre-colored clay. Its skull was intact, but the jaw was locked open in a scream that no one could unsee. And in its tiny clenched fist was a tooth. Not its own. The tooth was human, yes, but far too large to have belonged to anyone in the tribe, and older than the skeleton by thousands of years. How could a baby born in that cave be holding something so ancient? The answer they wrote in the reports is unknown. But privately, one of the scientists admitted he thought the tooth had been passed down, not through families, but through something else, something that had always been there, before the cave, before the people. And here's where fact and nightmare begin to blur, because the carvings, they weren't just of people. In some panels, the figures were bent backward, their mouths wide, as something crawled out of them, something thin, something faceless. And in those images, the something was always shown moving toward the largest figure, the one with the smooth, empty head. By now you've noticed what's missing from the story. There's no mention of predators, no mention of war. The people who lived here weren't starving. They had tools, fire, and food sources all around them. They didn't kill their young to survive. They killed them to feed something else. The ash layers were thickest at the mouth of the deepest shaft in the cave. No one knows how far it goes. Every attempt to measure it fails. Lights burn out, ropes fray, cameras glitch and die. And yet sometimes, on the recordings, you can hear the faint sound of something moving below. Not water, not wind, something slow or wet. One of the final reports written before the dig was shut down included a single line that has since been redacted in most copies. I've seen it. It said, "We believe the children were not eaten by their parents in death. They were offered while still alive." Imagine that. A mother holding her baby over the dark shaft, the sound of chanting filling the air. The faceless figure carved into the stone above her, watching, and then letting go. The body never hitting the ground. Some of the team think the shaft doesn't have a bottom, not in the way we understand it. They think it connects to something else, somewhere else. And here's the part that still wakes me at night. In one of the sealed boxes recovered from the site, there was a scrap of hide. The language was unknown, but the translation, pieced together from similar roots, came out as, "It comes for what is soft. Feed it before it learns to ask." Ask who? Ask you. When I read that line, I thought of Elia, of how she wouldn't speak after going into the narrow chamber, how she wouldn't even look at the rest of us. I thought of how she kept her hands pressed over her stomach in the days after, and I thought about the final night before she disappeared, how I woke to the sound of her boots on the gravel outside camp, and how I watched her walk toward the mouth of the cave, carrying something bundled in her arms. I never saw her again. In the morning, I followed her footprints to the ash pit. They stopped there. The ash was warm. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I think I can hear the same muffled crying she spoke about. Sometimes I think it's coming from inside me. And I wonder, if the thing in that cave has been fed for so long, what happens when we stop feeding it? You've been listening to this for a while now. Maybe too long. But you saw it too, didn't you? That flicker, just in the corner of your vision while I spoke. The shift in the air around you. They say the faceless figure only comes to those who know about it. And now you know. So if you hear crying tonight, thin, muffled, just beyond the wall of your room, don't open the door. Don't go looking. Because if you do, you might see it. And if you see it, it will not leave without taking something soft. Maybe a child. Or maybe you. And if you wake tomorrow, and your mouth tastes of ash, you'll know you've already taken the first bite.